Despite this, the alien AI is never allowed to cheat.
Oh, really? Is that how it's supposed to work? Then what the hell do you call this shit? Hello, it's Majima, and welcome back. It is the month of October, and we're just around the corner of Halloween, so why not talk about one of the most terrifying video games that I've ever played, and that is Alien Isolation. Now, in preparation for Alien Isolation 2's announcement, I decided to revisit Alien Isolation, and I decided to play it twice. I played one on the hard difficulty, and then on the other playthrough I did nightmare mode. And I have to say, there's a lot of disparity between the difficulties. We'll get into that. But first, let's talk about the journey that Alien Isolation had to take, because this is not really a review of Alien Isolation, but an overview. Alien Isolation got its first reveal back in February of 2014 with this trailer right here.
I'm Samuels. I work for the company. It's about your mother. We think we may have found her, Amanda. We get to shut the book. Ripley.
Obviously, the trailer focuses heavily on the horror aspect of the Alien franchise, which, well, 1979's Ridley Scott started as a horror movie. The reason why this game was honestly mixed for a very long time, and the reason why its success has really become more of a cult classic than booming success, the reason why is because back in 2013, there was a game that left a black mark on the Alien franchise. Obviously, anyone who knows anything about the Alien franchise would know I'm talking about Alien Colonial Marines. Now, Alien Colonial Marines, well, the development was really ransacked, I should say. But anyways, we're not here to talk about Alien Colonial Marines, we're here to talk about Alien Isolation. And obviously, the announcement of Alien Isolation 2. So, let's get into the overview. Let's talk about the cons first, real quick. Now, one thing I will say is that IGN had a review, I should say the more infamous review, and obviously, does the piece have some merit to it? Well, I won't say that there are not problems in the game. However, does the score fit the verdict? I'm not too sure if that's true. In my opinion, this game is a solid 8 to 8.5 out of 10. But that's more geared to my Alien fan side, not necessarily to my gamer side. There's some problems here. The first problem that I want to talk about is the radio precision. Now, the radio precision is talking more about the little radio wheel that you get when you start off the game. Obviously, this wheel is there to kind of function as a sub-menu. You see, when you press your circle button, or what is it, B button for Xbox or PC? Sorry. Anyways, when you press the radio button, which is usually the circle or B button, it pops up this menu where you can now then move your left stick basically you want to go to. Now, it's not problematic in terms of usually you don't really have much starting off. You can just pick off on, you know, the med kit, use that, pop it, and then go on with your business. However, problems start to occur when you start getting more blueprints, you start building more things, and you start, you know, collecting resources. Then it starts becoming a problem because now you're always actively going into the radio menu trying to get the perfect equipment, and sometimes you just mess up. Sometimes it just messes up, which is kind of a problem. Another problem, which I just talked about earlier, was the resources. You see, in this game, most of the time, you'll find resources in bins, not too sure what these are, lockers or whatever, and you'll be able to find items that are necessary to build your equipment that I was just talking about earlier. Now, the problem here is that on nightmare mode, things just get a little scarce here, and that's a bit of a problem that this game has, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But item resource in this game is a little tough because unlike in other games like in Resident Evil, you can just stow things away in a chest and then be on your business. However, in this game, the only way to stow things is to commit them to blueprints. And while that works in certain cases, there's just way too many resources to have that sometimes you don't get them. And you know, there are certain places where things drop 100% at the time, like this area right here. But these places are so far and few between that honestly, some playthroughs you'll just not use any of the improv. What do they call these things, anyways? Now that I think about it, I'm just gonna call them the improv gadgets, because basically that's what they are. They're just there for improvisation, literally. So let's get back to what I was going to talk about, the difficulty between modes here. From hard mode, you have, you know, somewhat of a okay balance, and then in nightmare mode, like 95% of item searches, or places to search for resources, I should say, all of them are cut to like 0, where you don't find any resource at all throughout the entirety of the game. And this is something that I had a problem with in nightmare mode. Although I should say that I played nightmare mode first and then hard mode, and my playtime was rather similar without the cutscenes. The cutscenes made it an hour and a half longer, I believe, but with difficulty aside, the game was rather the same, honestly. But the only difference between difficulties is how the AI of the alien works, and not necessarily too much about the combat, because the combat can be done the same way if you really want to. Where the problem with this is that the enemies is way too... I should say that you are heavily incentivized in this game to not engage in combat. And so the way you would engage in these enemies, which there's only a few enemies. There's only the androids, humans, and then the alien. That's it. That's all the enemies you will encounter throughout your entirety of the Sevastopol. The problem here is that because you are incentivized to not engage with your enemies, there are two ways to deal with them. Either utilize the alien to engage with human AI, or sneak around everything. So now you're left with, okay, well, how do I deal with the androids? Well, the androids, there are a few, I should say, ways to deal with them. Either shoot them or stun them in some kind of way. But again, here comes the problem with the difference of difficulty here. In nightmare mode, I was only able to use the stun rod throughout the entirety of the playthrough of 9 hours once. I was only able to use it once. I never got any ammo at all for the stun rod. And this is something that is a little bit problematic and why I'm highlighting it. Now, the problem with the enemies is that they're way too generic, I guess you could say. And working Joes are usually just walking towards you. They don't really do anything, but they grab you way too much, which obviously further incentivizes that, hey, utilize stealth to get away from the androids. And I don't know if that makes a good game, honestly, which is why I'm highlighting it right now. The other problem that I found was there are many times where I would literally forget about my tools that I had. I would forget about my noisemaker sometimes. I would forget about my EMPs, my Molotovs, everything. I would forget about it because honestly, there are so many times where I just walk everywhere that I forget that I had these things. And not having dedicated buttons to literally cycle between gadgets, I think it would be a fine improvement in the next game to have some kind of quick menu. That way we can go through one gadget to another. Now, the other problem we're going to go into is some pace issues. This usually deals with the storyline, and honestly, I'm not too much of someone who talks a lot about the story, mostly because I somewhat fly through most games. And, you know, I'll listen to the story on the first playthrough, don't get it wrong, but in this story, basically we're just talking about, you know, things that are bad. Some of the things that are bad in this game are not bad on the first playthrough, which is rather weird to say because you go through certain sections. I don't want to really spoil it, but at the same time, this game has been out for 10 years. If you haven't played it, I mean, too bad. I mean, I'll give a warning right now. So, one of the problems of this game is there are many situations where you have no choice but to walk. And one of the problems is that you literally can't run during these sections. So I'm talking about mostly the spacewalks and LV-426 when you go through as, what's his name? I forgot his name. Anyways, when you go through those sections, you cannot run. You have to walk everywhere, which is honestly a time commitment, honestly. And it's okay the first time around because the first time around, you're just thinking, wow, this is neat. This is awesome. But after you do like the second playthrough or third playthrough, you just get this feeling of, oh God, here we go again. And I think we need to quicken the pace here because sometimes it's not fun doing those generators and, you know, cranking the generators up every single time in this space. It's not fun. All right, well, now that we got most of the stuff that I had an issue with, let's get into what really makes Alien Isolation good. So first off, let's talk about the environments. Now, the environments are literally just, I wouldn't say ripped off. I want to say just heavily inspired by 1979's Ridley Scott's environment of the Nostromo, where you have vents literally sticking out, you have coils everywhere of the spaceship walls, you have these claustrophobic hallways, and really lo-fi sci-fi here. Like, they really did try to emulate the first movie as well as they could, and it shows. And it's something that really speaks a lot to, you know, Alien fans, where you go through and you're like, whoa, this seems rather familiar. And you got the pods from the first movie, and you're just looking through, and obviously at the very beginning of the game, you know, you talk to Samuel, and literally this is essentially what the Nostromo was. You literally played through a dedicated, you know, spaceship that's very similar to Nostromo, and I think that was one of their key goals in this game with Creative Assembly was, let's just try to make the first movie as connected as we could in terms of authentically trying to recreate the movie in the game, which I think they really did a good job with. And let's talk about sound. The sound in Alien Isolation is really immersive, where this game is just good immersion hell, as I like to call it, because every single time you don the headphones and you go in to almost any kind of mission, doesn't matter which one it is, you have the vents kicking around as if something is in them. You have just something crackling because it's broken. You have something just moving around, and it just causes this eerie, unsettling feeling in your stomach, and you just go, oh god, okay, where did that sound come from? Is the alien nearby? Now, spoiler alert, the alien doesn't really go online until mission 3, I believe. But even then, it's very, very short, and it's only consolidated to one specific area, which is where the hostile enemies, the human AI, is. And as soon as you go through that little area, you don't have to deal with the alien anymore. However, the alien still lingers around in that area. So if you do make some noise, well, this is what happened to me. Total shitteth of the pants. One of the things that I really enjoy about this game is how the music for Alien Isolation is both very reminiscent of the 1979 Alien movie, which I'm a huge fan of. And sometimes the music actually does have some little motifs where you can hear some of the Alien music from the movie in the game. And honestly, it's one of those situations where it really brings you back into the game rather than take you out, because little sound cues like that really do make a lot to immerse you. So, and besides with the music, we got lighting. Lighting in Alien Isolation is probably everything. This game is dark, and it's very hard to see sometimes. There are some corridors that are so dark that you have to have a flashlight, otherwise you wouldn't be able to see. And it can be problematic for recording, but playing it is a blast sometimes because you know you're in the dark and scary things are moving around. The lighting about Alien Isolation is kind of what stands out between a lot of other horror genre games, where a lot of horror games kind of just stick with the dark aesthetic. This game really does have a blend of a lot of things. It has very light moments where at the very beginning and even in the middle section too, there's a lot of bright sequences where you're facing androids, but the dark settings and where there's flickering lights, yeah, if you have epilepsy, this game probably will make you have a seizure. I'm sorry. When you go into the nest, whew, the first time I went to the nest was trauma inducing. Besides trauma inducing, let's talk about the alien. Now, the alien AI is still one of the most intricate AIs that has come out of gaming ever since, honestly. The way that the alien AI works is extensive. If you want to learn more about it, you can look at various other YouTubers. Here's one that I'll leave a link in the description below, where you'll be able to see more about what goes on with the alien AI. I'm just doing a slight overview again, not going into deep discussion about this. And you could see right here, I'm showing you a picture of the alien's extensive AI branch, where they got a lot of nodes, and these nodes get activated during your playthrough of Alien Isolation, where the alien, it looks like it's progressing through a branch. Now, obviously, difficulty does affect the alien AI, and on the highest difficulty, it looks like, well, just certain hiding places become invalidated so quickly. But that's for a different discussion. So let's talk about the peak mechanic. The peak mechanic is a very interesting mechanic. As far as I know, there hasn't been a peak mechanic of this in any other survival horror game since or even before this game. And it's completely unique to Alien Isolation. And honestly, I really think that this mechanic allows Alien Isolation to stand alone, because there's a lot of tricks you can do with the peek mechanic. Obviously, the peek mechanic is there intended to peek around corners, peek around cover to see if you're okay. But there's also other little tricks that you can do with the peek mechanic. One prominent one is to hide from the alien, which the alien doesn't necessarily see you or sense you by seeing your character's model. It's more about the camera interaction, which is awkward. Now, the problem with this game, obviously, besides the issues that I previously mentioned, are bugs. And the bugs in this game can vary from visual to audio. And the audio issues aren't that much of a problem. I mean, they can be fixed rather easily. But when it comes to the visual issues, sometimes they're very hard to fix. And other times, the audio issues are also very hard to fix, and they can overlap sometimes, and they become a mess, where sometimes you're holding a weapon and Amanda doesn't hold anything, and other times you're holding nothing in your hand and there's sounds that are coming as if you're holding a weapon. And this usually starts with the flamethrower, where the flamethrower has a canister that kind of swish swashes when you're holding it, and when you decide to put it away, that swish swash motion and sound still linger on, and it can be rather distracting, especially when the alien is you know, around a corner, and you have to listen to the footsteps to see if they're getting, you know, louder or if they're getting, you know, distant. And these things are not necessarily a problem when it comes to, you know, just a regular playthrough, because they can just easily be, you know, fixed if you decide to aim your flamethrower or to, you know, switch weapons and then go back to the weapon to see the weapon again. But sometimes the audio lingers, again, distracting you, and that can be a problem. One of the problems I was having with bugs was that I was always seeing this flicker. And it always seemed to feel like the alien director was out to kill me. Because remember that clip that I showed you at the very beginning of this video? Well, let me show you the full thing. You see that right there? This is what I always saw. And every single time I saw that, the alien would drop down, or the alien would go to my location. Any one of those two things happened, that is what was going on. And honestly, I've never seen this before because I've played the PS4 version of this. I've played the PS5 version of this. But I never saw issues like that before. Or I was also having different issues on the PS4, I believe, where literally I was just playing a randomized version of the game, where the game literally broke down on me, and I would go through one door, I would end up in a completely different area. I would then go through another door and end up in a completely different area. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. Honestly, I hope in Alien Isolation 2, they can fix some of those really weird, intricate bugs. Honestly, this is a really solid game, okay? But I think let's try to figure out some improvements so that Alien Isolation 2 is a better game and honestly better experience than some people had. Because the problem with this game is that sometimes it could be a little too terrifying, where people drop it because they're far too scared to go along. And, you know, some people might get a little offended by that, but to be honest, I mean, it's fair. No one really wants to be terrified all the time. And even though the makers really try to make sure that, you know, you don't get scared all the time, sometimes it's bad sometimes. The other thing that I would hope they do is to allow faster movement and faster animation, because honestly, here's my problem with this game, is that the game is way too slow. The game is way too slow when it comes to certain pacing. Now, this animation I have seen like 1,000 times. I don't think we need to see Amanda turn the knob on the torch and start, you know, torching through every steel compartment there is. Can we at least like just get it to where it's like she has the torch ready and it just goes all the way around? And why do I have to control this stuff? I think getting some of the QTE stuff out, and to be fair, it was a different era at the time where a lot of games were doing QTE things, but I think just having simple button inputs would make it better, to where opening the door is just, hey, let me just open this up. I'm here to open it up. Why do I have to press other buttons to open up the door? And honestly, I don't understand the entirety of upgrading, you know, like your torch or upgrading your tuner. if you're not going to incentivize exploration. The problem with the Alien Isolation first game is the map, while it is convoluted in some cases, I never really utilized the map because Nightmare mode doesn't allow you to have a map. And I couldn't really like figure out everything in terms of exploration. I'm not gonna waste my time to look around places when literally the alien can kill me at any point in time, which was a problem. Is you would go to one place, you would run, guess what? Alien drops down, kills you, right? Obviously, if you know how to deal with it, you can get around it, but that was my problem, was the alien was always feeling like I was never able to run, which is what I kind of want, is some kind of faster movement between sections. And I think maybe allowing some kind of way to not fend off the alien, but kind of maybe like decommission the alien for a set amount of time. That way it can give you some space, you know, some good space. Obviously not in certain sections throughout the entirety of the time that I've played this game. I have found the alien in every single area of the game, but I think that is what makes exploration kind of useless, is having the alien AI just come out of nowhere in some place that you were in, and then all of a sudden the alien decides to drop down and you're like, whoa, I wasn't ready for this. I was not ready for this. So again, maybe having exploration be something and make it worth it. Because another thing that was problematic was, if you do decide to explore in this game, sometimes it doesn't feel worth it. It really doesn't. And one of the things that was kind of annoying was, even if you do explore things, when you decide to do the main mission, please allow me to skip some dialogue. These characters talk way too much. And I get it. They are trying to build a narrative. I get that. But again, when you play this for your 5th time, I don't want to be listening to every speech that I come across. Can we please skip dialogue? Can we please skip certain sequences? Because walking on LV-426 the first time around is awesome. After the second time, third time, it's not so awesome. Can we please skip things like that? I think that's honestly kind of how I think we should evolve it. And I think, and here's a quick final thought and a quick, just interesting theory. Obviously, Alien has been around for some time. There's numerous games that have come out, and honestly, one game in particular kind of feels like they could coexist here, and that's Alien Trilogy. Hello, Future Bob here, and I wanted to amend a previous statement that I just uttered not too long ago. This is not Alien Trilogy, this is in fact Alien Resurrection. And the truth is that the box art looks completely similar. Almost identical, honestly. And I couldn't tell the difference between them, honestly. They're not good games, but to be honest, they're very similar, so I had to pick. It was a 50-50. And Alien Trilogy just sounds a little bit better than Resurrection, because Resurrection's film was really bad. So that's why I went with Trilogy and not Resurrection. But just to be fair, I was always picturing Alien Resurrection in my head. It was not Alien Trilogy. Okay? Anyways, let's get back to it. I think Alien Trilogy could be a good starting point for Amanda Ripley's evolution, honestly, to being a little bit more capable, having a bit more, I guess you could say, dangerous firearms to take out some aliens. I do think that if you're going to do it that way, where you're going to have a little bit more of a first-person shooter kind of approach, have a super alien be some kind of deterrent from shooting every alien. That way, when the super alien comes down, you go and decide to hide. So honestly, that was kind of my thinking about it. What is your thinking about it? If you really have some kind of feeling towards Alien Isolation, maybe you agree or disagree, leave a comment down below, leave a like, and hey, if you really want to support what I'm doing here, subscribe. And anyways, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.